Joseph was just a young dreamer, Jacob's favorite son, when his life changed forever. He had vivid and unusual dreams, visions that showed something great reserved for his future. However, these same dreams provoked jealousy in his brothers, who saw him as their father's favorite and a promise they couldn't understand. Instead of admiration, Joseph found rejection and resentment, until one day his brothers made a cruel decision. They threw him into a dark, pitiless well, far from home and his father's protection. But Joseph's story didn't end at the bottom of that pit. On the contrary, it was only the beginning of a journey marked by faith and trust in God. Every twist in his life, from betrayals to triumphs, reveals a powerful lesson about the divine purpose that, even amid difficulties, never fails. Joseph's journey began with dreams he barely understood. These dreams were not mere illusions of grandeur, but prophetic visions sent by God. In one of them, he saw sheaves of wheat, his standing while his brothers bowed around him. In another vision, the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed before him. To Joseph, these dreams were intriguing, full of mystery and hope, but to his brothers, they seemed to be omens of arrogance. When Joseph shared these dreams with his family, he might have hoped they would understand something special he felt. Instead, he only triggered the anger and jealousy of his brothers, who interpreted the visions as a sign that Joseph saw himself as superior to them. Even his father, Jacob, though he pondered the meaning of these revelations, rebuked him for appearing ambitious. Despite the negative reactions, Joseph held firm to his visions. They were promises he didn't fully understand, but he felt they were part of something greater, something given by God. This simple beginning, with dreams that seemed improbable, set the tone for a life destined to prove that even the greatest promises can arise from moments of misunderstanding and rejection. The days of living with his brothers became increasingly tense. With each dream Joseph shared, his brothers' envy grew, and their anger fueled the idea that the youngest intended to rule over them. Then, one day, while working in the field, the opportunity arose for the brothers to end this threat that Joseph represented. Far from home in the field, Joseph's brothers decided to act. They took him by surprise, stripped him of his colorful coat that marked him as their father's favorite, and threw him into an empty, deep, cold well. This was a moment of utter abandonment for Joseph. He went from a position of honor in his father's eyes to being forgotten and rejected by those who should have loved him. Alone at the bottom of the well, with no one to help him, Joseph faced the first great test of his faith. To him, the pit seemed like the end. To God, it was only the beginning. The pit is the symbolic place where Joseph would need to begin trusting fully in the divine purpose. This moment represents that, even when everything seems lost, there is still hope in an invisible hand that guides destiny. After being sold as a slave to the Ishmaelite traders, Joseph found himself in the land of Egypt, far from everything he knew. However, his journey of faith was far from over. Joseph was bought by Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard. Even as a slave, he stood out for his skill, integrity, and dedication, quickly gaining the trust of his new master. God was with him, and Potiphar noticed that everything Joseph did prospered. Over time, Joseph was promoted to supervisor of Potiphar's household, a position of great responsibility. However, Joseph's rise was not well received by everyone. Potiphar's wife, attracted to his youth and integrity, attempted to seduce him. But Joseph, faithful to God and his master, firmly resisted her advances, choosing to maintain his honor. "How could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" he replied when confronted. However, his integrity led to unexpected consequences. Potiphar's wife, frustrated and humiliated, falsely accused Joseph of assault. Thus, he was thrown into prison. Once again, Joseph saw his life turned upside down, but his faith and resilience were stronger than ever. Now unjustly imprisoned, Joseph faced yet another trial in his life, The false accusation made by Potiphar's wife placed him in a desperate situation. Imprisoned in a dark dungeon, far from everything and everyone, Joseph might have wondered where God was in this moment. Yet, despite being in his worst situation, he never lost faith. In prison, Joseph continued to demonstrate his character and loyalty to God. Even amid injustice, he did not succumb to bitterness or despair. God was once again with him. And, as always, Joseph's faithfulness did not go unnoticed. The chief jailer soon realized that Joseph had exceptional wisdom and skill and put him in charge of the other prisoners. This phase of Joseph's life is a powerful example of how we can respond in times of injustice. Instead of rebelling or giving in to bitterness, he chose to be faithful. Joseph teaches us that when circumstances seem unbearable, perseverance and faith in God can sustain us, even when everything around us seems to be falling apart. Even in prison, Joseph did not lose his essence or the gifts God had given him. At one point, two other prisoners, the cupbearer and the baker of Pharaoh, arrived in prison and had disturbing dreams. Joseph, always attentive to the greater purpose God had for him, inquired about the dreams and offered to interpret them. The cupbearer dreamed of a vine with clusters of grapes being squeezed into Pharaoh's cup, and Joseph explained that in 3 days he would be freed and restored to his position. The baker dreamed of carrying loaves of bread, but birds ate them, and Joseph revealed that he would be hanged in 3 days. Both interpretations came true, as Joseph said, which earned him even more credibility. What is fascinating here is how Joseph continued to use his gifts, even in times of adversity. His ability to interpret dreams, a gift given by God, was not tied to his social position or situation, but to his faithfulness in serving. Even in prison, Joseph remained true to his purpose and used his abilities to benefit others. This teaches us that, regardless of circumstances, there is always something valuable we can offer the world. Joseph's fate took a surprising turn when the cupbearer, after being restored to his position, finally remembered Joseph when Pharaoh had a troubling dream. Pharaoh saw 7 fat cows being devoured by 7 thin cows, followed by 7 good ears of grain being consumed by withered ones. None of Egypt's wise men could interpret the dream until the cupbearer remembered Joseph and recommended him to the king. Now, before Pharaoh, Joseph not only interpreted the dream, but also suggested a plan to manage the coming abundance and famine. He explained that the 7 years of abundance would be followed by 7 years of famine, and Egypt should store food to survive. Impressed by Joseph's wisdom, Pharaoh made him governor of Egypt, giving him the authority to oversee the collection and distribution of grain. In an instant, Joseph went from prisoner to ruler, from a pit of despair to the palace. This moment of ascension was not just a matter of luck or skill, but clear evidence of divine providence. Joseph demonstrated that, even in times of complete uncertainty, God has a sovereign plan and can transform any situation, lifting us from where we are to where He wants us. After years of separation, the famine that ravaged the land brought Joseph's brothers to Egypt in search of food. Unaware of who Joseph was, for he now presented himself as a powerful and distinguished man, they bowed before him, exactly as he had seen in his dreams when he was young. However, Joseph immediately recognized them, but before revealing himself, he decided to test them. In a moment of great tension, Joseph put his brothers to the test, observing their reactions, especially toward Benjamin, the only one left from his mother, Rachel. During this process, he felt a mix of pain, anger, and compassion, but at the same time, a deep need to understand if they had changed since the day of betrayal. Finally, unable to contain his emotions any longer, Joseph revealed who he was. "I am Joseph, the brother you sold," he said, leaving them in shock. But instead of seeking revenge, he forgave them wholeheartedly. Joseph explained that although they had mistreated him, he saw God's hand in everything that had happened, for it was to preserve life that he was sent to this land. This moment of forgiveness is one of the most powerful moments in Joseph's story. He chose to forgive, not out of weakness, but out of understanding of the divine plan. Joseph's forgiveness not only restored his relationship with his brothers, but also brought healing and reconciliation to his entire family. Joseph was not just a leader by position, but by the divine wisdom that guided his decisions. When he became governor of Egypt, he didn't just manage the kingdom's resources, but applied solid principles of management and planning, based on the vision God had given him. He was wise in managing the abundance of the 7 years and the scarcity of the 7 years of famine that followed, ensuring Egypt was well prepared to face the challenge. His wisdom was not just practical, it was wisdom founded in trust in God. Joseph did not see his position as a mere result of his own effort, but as a responsibility given by God. He recognized that all his success came from the Lord, who had prepared the way for him from the difficult days in the pit to his reign in Egypt. Joseph's story teaches us that the way to leadership, success, and wisdom is often paved with adversity. In the journey of faith, God does not promise a life free of challenges, but he promises to be with us through them. Joseph's life is a testament to the fact that faith, perseverance, and forgiveness can transform the most difficult situations into opportunities for growth, healing, and restoration.